All right, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining me. Go ahead and get started here. Let me get the camera where I want it. There we go. So if you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, like a mobile device. If you are on a screen, larger screen, like a laptop, desktop, something like that, it should be to the right of the video. So I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So let me scroll down here, see what we're starting with. So I'll be starting here with Gary P. So if you happen to be on here more than an hour ago, so that'd be 2 p.m. Eastern time, no worries. Just copy and paste your question in there, and we'll get it answered. So Gary P says, in order to maximize my drive, should I feel like I'm maxing out my swing from the top forward, or should I gradually feel an increase in speed? In order to maximize my drive, should I feel like I'm maxing out my swing from the top forward? I guess I'm not really sure exactly what you mean by that. By the top forward, maxing out your swing from the top forward. You mean, should you be trying to swing or trying to get speed at the top? I'd be trying to get speed in your swing as soon as possible. Because if you just kind of go, if you go up to the top and then just kind of go slow, it's going to be too late to add speed. So I'd be trying to get speed, trying to get force into the handle of the club as soon as you possibly can. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's going to be the best thing for speed. Get force going into this handle as much and as quickly as possible in the downswing for sure. So Ricky W says, how do you keep from having too many swing thoughts? What swing thought would you recommend? Well, that's going to be different for everybody as far as what swing thought you would recommend. What I'd recommend doing is, try to have, ideally you'd really have no swing thoughts and you would just kind of play autonomously, but that's usually not the case. Usually there is going to be some sort of swing thought that's going to help you play better. So if you have a swing thought, here's what it has to do. It has to help you hit the ball better. It can't be a detriment. And that's where I think a lot of people where they get too many is where it becomes a detriment, right? Because you can only really focus on one thing at one time, right? If you focus on more than one thing at one time, then you won't do either one of those things very well, right? So if you think about if you're texting and driving, if you're texting and driving, you're either going to be texting really well and driving poorly, or texting poorly and driving well. You're not going to do both of those, or you're going to do both of them bad, right? You're going to be trying to text and drive well at the same time. You're going to do both of them bad. So you can think about things like you can have a backswing swing thought, and if you can clear your mind and then think about one downswing swing thought, and then you could have a finish to the swing thought. You can have it at different periods in the swing. That's possible to do that. And you can think about, you can just have one swing thought that you just think about throughout the entire swing. That you just, I would try to keep it to a minimum of one at a time, right? And then and if you're going to have multiple, they have to be at different times in the swing. So, for example, let's say you're working on the 20-minute distance fix, right? And you found out during the 20-minute distance fix that the feeling of you maybe feeling like your shirt buttons turned away from the target as much as you can, because that's one feeling that we talk about in the catapult drill, is to get your shoulders to turn. You think about your shirt buttons to be turning away from the target as much as you can, right? And then maybe you struggle with chunking, right? So maybe a good swing thought for that would be to make sure you get to your lead side, right? So those could be two swing thoughts that you can separate because they're at different times in the swing, right? So in the backswing, I can think shirt buttons turn, and then in the downswing, I can think about, okay, I'm gotta get to my lead side and get on my lead foot. So you can separate them like that, but that would be how I'd recommend doing it. If you have multiple, if you're thinking about doing 20 different things in your swing, it's not going to work because you're not going to do If you do one well, you're going to do the rest of them very terribly. So your best bet is to do what actually helps you to hit the golf ball best. If you're thinking about something and it's not helping you to hit the golf ball better, then you need to think about something else. And it is a skill to find that thing. There's going to be some days when you just can't find the swing thought that's going to help you to hit the golf ball better, right? And there's going to be some day when you're thinking about one thing the entire day and you played really, really well, as long as you thought about that one thing. So that's just the game, for you. So that's what I would recommend. I'd be trying to just limit it as much as you possibly can. They have to be things that help you. And I try to only think about one thing at a time. If you have the ability to, you can separate them at different points in the swing. But the golf swing happens in a very short amount of time. We're talking like a second, right? A little more than a second. So, it can be difficult to separate those things. So if you struggle with that, then I would just stick out one swing thought, if that's the case. All right. So Rick W says, wife got me time on simulator for Christmas. What should I focus to help my game the most? Again, that's going to be specific to you. There's not something I would say. There's probably lots of things that you could do to help your game. I would have to see your swing and know your tendency. Can you give me a little bit of, like, basically what I would think about is what keeps me up at night with my golf game? What is the thing that would, if I did this one thing well, that it would shave the most strokes off my score? That's what I'll be working on. So let's say it's a big, huge slice. Maybe you hit a big slice and you have trouble with consistency because you're always cutting across the ball. You lose distance. You over slice it sometimes, and you end up in the woods or something like that. Well, the thing that you should be working on is getting rid of your slice. Work through our Never Slice Again course and do that at the simulator to try to get the ball to draw on the simulator, right? So that's what I'd look at. I would look at what is the thing that is hampering me the most from shooting lower scores. The one thing. I would think about 20 different things. The one thing, the biggest thing, tackle that, right? Exaggerate whatever the opposite is. So if you're hitting big slices, then I try to hit big hooks, right? If you're hitting big hooks, then I try to hit big slices, right? If you're hitting it way off, if toe strikes or shanks are the problem, right? Shanks are the problem, then I try to hit everything off the toe as much as you can. So exaggerate the opposite of whatever your impact issue is, and that's what I would work on. Beyond that, maybe look at the top speed golf system, work on that. You can work through the 20-minute distance fix. The distance is a key. But again, there's not one thing that's going to help that's like a blanket thing. It's specific to you. So if you add a little bit more context, I may be able to give you something more specific. But without that, that's kind of what I'd recommend doing. Think about what is the one big thing. So Kobe B says, in range sessions lately, I found I really concentrate on trigger finger and thumb pressure that I better can control face angle and eliminate overhooking. What do I need to look at? What do I need to look for if I go far with this approach? Today's range session. Again, I'm not really sure exactly. In range sessions lately, I have found if I really concentrate on my trigger finger and thumb pressure, that I better can control face angle and eliminate overhooking. What do I need to look at? What do I need to look for if I go far with this approach? I don't know. I don't really know exactly what. So you putting more pressure, and I'm not sure which thumbs and fingers you're talking about, whether it's the left hand or the right hand, trail hand or lead hand. But I'm not sure what you mean you need to look out for. Now, typically, if you put more pressure in the lead hand or with the trail hand here, if you put a lot of pressure in there, you're typically going to be releasing early. So I guess that'd be something to look out for, would be an early release, adding loft. That'd be something to look out for. So Mike D says, hey, not sure when people look at this, but I was curious if there was a video on the site that discussion what the leg feel is between compression line and straight line release. Looking at Clay MMA Pros, it looks like they are almost jumping up through impact. I cannot figure out this feeling. So that's a good question. So essentially, well, the reason why you see that it's hip rotation. So the hips are rotating open so much that it brings the foot off the ground. So what we have to think about is what leads up to that point. All right. So you're not going to be able. So imagine if you were to jump, what would you do? Right. If you were to jump as high as you possibly could, what would you do? You would squat down, right? And then jump up. You wouldn't just go like that, right? You kind of look like Phil Mickelson, jumping up. If you really wanted to jump as high as you could, you would get down and then you would jump up. So that's what has to happen in the golf swing as well. Now, we don't need to squat down like that, but what we need to do in the start of the downswing is we need to get we need to have our legs flexed, right? And then from there, we can rotate, right? We can get down and rotate. So there's two things that are going on there. You're putting force down into the ground with your legs because you are kind of jumping, right? And then you are also twisting. So the feeling is almost like if I go like this and then I jump like that. So I'm putting force into the ground to make me jump up, but I'm also almost like I'm on top of a lid. So if you imagine, I grab my vitamins here, and I have this lid on top. So it's almost like I'm on top of this lid, and I turn to the top, and then I flex down, and I jump up as I'm kind of twisting that lid this way. That's what I want to feel like is happening. That's what's happening in tour players when you see them kind of jump when their lead leg kind of floats off the ground. That's from that. So it's jumping and rotating. And in order to do that, we have to get down first, right? So here's the top of the swing. There's the start of the downswing. And then we're jumping and rotating. So we're putting pressure down into the ground. And then we're also pushing out away from you that way. And then back behind you this way. So you're pushing with your trail leg is kind of pushing off a little bit to go that way, right? So to get my hip to go that way with my trail leg, I need to kind of push back away from me. So if you imagine I'm standing on top of a clock, this is 12 o'clock, this is 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock's behind me, 9 o'clock, right? I'm pushing down into the ground and then toward what would be 4:30 on the clock behind me with my trail leg. With my lead leg, I'm pushing down and out toward 10:30 in the clock. So opposite directions, right? Opposite directions, 10:30 and 4:30. And I'm pushing down, and that's making me go like that. So my trail leg is straightening, right? To make that happen, I'm pushing into the ground. I'm also pushing out away from that. It's pushing my hip back and up. And the only way you can really do that is to get down low first. So there's a great drill. I believe it might be in the compression line course. It's called the release, how to release the club with the legs or something like that. Just search release legs on the website and you'll find this video. So in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little box there, a search window. You can search release legs, 2 words, and you'll find the video I'm talking about to help you kind of with this. Clay talks about getting your hands low and then pushing with your legs, kind of like what we talked about there. And then there's also lots of videos. You can search hips on the website, find lots of videos on hip rotation with drills to work in with that. But that's kind of what needs to happen is those forces need to be going on there. And then lastly, if you're on the mobile site, you can still search things. It's just going to take a little bit more getting to it. So in the upper right-hand corner, if you're on the mobile site, there's a little icon there. It's like 3 horizontal lines. Select that. That will expand a menu. Scroll down to the bottom of that menu, and you'll find the search box there. You can search release legs, or you can just search hips, and you'll find lots and lots of stuff to help you get that, what I just talked about, that proper feeling there. All right. So Robert M says, on video, I noticed that my right trail foot is still flat on the ground. I struggle with early extension with longer clubs, and my hips and shoulders are square at impact, trying to figure out the footwork component of it. So there's lots of reasons why that may be, and I'll go through a few of them, the most common ones that I see. In order for me to really pinpoint exactly the reason you personally are in that kind of position at impact, then I would have to see your swing and so on and so forth. But I'll go through a couple of the major things I see. So one thing is at address. So if you look at address, a lot of times people who have this issue will be really, really bent over the ball, right? And their backside will be very much over their heels. So when your backside is over your heels, you're going to tend to stand up in the backswing. And when you tend to stand up in the backswing, you'll tend to stand up in the downswing. So I talked about earlier how in order to get the hips to kind of open up, you have to have that reflexing of the legs here. Well, if you're standing up in the backswing and then standing up in the downswing, that's the opposite. And you will not rotate if you do that. And that may be what's going on in your swing. So I look at that. You also may be reacting to other things that are going on in your swing. So, for example, if this club is steep, right? If this club is in a steep position, meaning this club is vertical in my transition here in the start of the downswing, so this club's kind of pointing inside the golf ball on this side of the golf ball. If that is the case, if I want to get this club on plane, my only real option is to stand up, right? So if I stand up, that gets my handle kind of moving that way and gets that club to go like this. But if I stand up, again, that's my hips moving the opposite direction. We're going into early extension. Now I get that club on plane, but I can't rotate in our early release. You can hit functional golf shots doing this. You're just not going to be, they're just not going to be super efficient, right? Because you're not going to be getting ball first contact, but you're not going to be getting compression on the ball. So if you're steep in the downswing, that's basically what the move is. All right. So, and maybe you are. So I would look at these two things for sure. I would look at your address, right? And I would look at if you're starting down steep. And it may be a combination of both of these things. But if at address, you see that your backside's way over the ball, and if you see that you're coming down, or if you see that you're coming down shallow, right? This club is pointing outside the golf ball when you're coming down, then I would work through our stop early extension course, because there could be, like, you just don't know how to move your hips the right way. You're not in the right posture at address, and you don't know how to stay in your posture through contact. So that's going to be the stop early extension course. If you see that your club is steep, right, then I would work through the move. The move is going to get you to shallow out, because if the club is steep, your hips are just reacting to the position of your club, and that's why you're early extending. That doesn't mean that once you get the club shallow, you may not do the same thing, but it means that you've got to have this club shallowed out if you want to be able to stay in your posture. Now, because you imagine if I was coming down steep and I didn't early extend, well, I would go like this. This club would be so far over the top, I'd hit a bunch of slices and pulls. So it's not a real functional way to hit the golf ball. It's much more. I'd much rather have somebody stand up, early release, flip, because they'll at least be able to hit it straight, right, and on target. They'll be more consistent than the person that swings way over the top and cuts across the ball, because you're going to have a two-way miss. You're going to hit a lot of pulls, you're going to hit a lot of slices, and everything in between. So that's what I'd rather have. But I'd look at that in your swing and see what's going on there, and then go to the appropriate course to work on it. Now, there could be other things that are going on. There's lots and lots of things there. There's a lot of chicken or the egg kind of situations there. And if you'd like me to take a look at your swing to tell you specifically, hey, this is what's going on, let's work on this, then I'd recommend signing up for my unlimited swing reviews. Let me check and see if I have any spots available at the moment. Last I checked, I did not. But we can take a look here and see what's going on. Yeah, so at the moment, I don't have any spots available. But if you'd like to do unlimited swing reviews with me in the future, then click that get a review at the top of the page there and scroll down, and you'll see my picture down there, and you'll see where you can join the waiting list. When you join the waiting list, what that does is that puts you on a list of emails that get emailed whenever I open up spots. I always email the waiting list first, and that's first come, first served to those folks there. And I always sell out to the waiting list. So if you're interested in doing unlimited swing reviews with me, make sure that you join that waiting list. Otherwise, you may never get notified whenever spots become available. The only way you'd be able to get a spot would be if you lucked out and you were on the page when I opened up spots and you didn't get the email. You just kind of were in the right place at the right time. So if you're interested, make sure you do that. If you want to kind of work through this on your own, those would be the two places I would look. I would look at your the steepness of the shaft and kind of your posture at address and the posture that you keep throughout the swing when you're reacting to the club. And if you think it's more you don't know how to move your hips and your posture is bad at address and throughout the swing and you're shallowing out the club, then I would look at the stop early extension course. If you look into the club is steep and you feel like your hips are reacting to the position the club is in, then I work on the move. You can get to both of these courses by selecting the house icon at the top of the page. That'll take you to the home page. If you scroll down the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses there. Select the course that you feel like you need there. A very, very common problem you talked about there. Excuse me. So Barry H says, I miss a lot of greens, then chip short trying to make par. Other than practice, what can help? I miss a lot of greens, then chip short trying to make par. Other than practice, what can help? So are you wanting help with hitting more greens, or are you wanting help with chipping it closer? I would venture on the part of trying to hit more greens, right? So it's hard for me to say exactly why without seeing your swing, why you might be hitting greens. But you have to look at what I would think about what's happening at contact, right? So if you're still on here, see if you can give me more information about what's going on at contact that's making you miss those greens, right? So are you chunking shots? Are you missing everything to the right, missing everything to the left? Hook, slice, top, thin. What's going on with your ball flight that's not allowing you to make it there? Is it you don't have enough distance, right? So your approach shot is so long that you can't get to the green. That could be what's going on. And if that's the case, you may want to work on getting some distance. There isn't anything or there isn't much that's going to be instant that's going to stop that. Pretty much anything you want to do to improve your game is going to require practice. Now, there may be some adjustments that you can make, then we can make a small difference, but to make real wholesale difference in your swing or in your golf game, it's going to take, it's going to take some practice for sure. Now, as far as chipping is concerned, what I would recommend doing is looking at our chipping course, right? And I think about the same thing. What is going on in your chipping that you're leaving all the chips short? If you're leaving the chip short, are you chunking it? Are you thinning it? What's going on with your contact and your ball flight that's not allowing you to hit it there? Because that's really what you want to do. You want to look at to get down to it and find the things that help you the most. You want to focus on what's going on with your ball flight and what's going on at that moment of truth impact, and then work out to the technique from there, right? So what the top speed golf system is that they're all the pieces in the swing that we see, the biggest pieces in the swing that we see tour players do that allow you to have the best contact, right? But that's not the best way to, if you're looking for a self-guided program where you don't have to know what's going on in your swing to fix what's going on, then that's the best thing you can do. But if you're looking for specific help, you have to kind of look at that. You have to look at what's going on with your contact, what's going on with your ball flight, and work out from that, because you have to have kind of a action-reaction kind of thing going on there, cause and effect. Otherwise, you're just kind of working on things to work on things, right? So that's what I would look at. And if you have something more specific of what's going on, I'll be happy to help you with that. But without anything more specific, it's hard for me to know. I would say the chipping mastery course would be a good place to go. Again, there's nothing that's going to be quick, that's going to be lightning fast. Everything's going to require practice for sure to get big differences. All right, so Barry G says, hi Q, working on stable fluid spine, getting good angles at address. I struggle to increase spine angle at top of swing and at impact. I have about 20 degrees, but hips are very slightly left and rotation is tiny, but less than I'd like. Any ideas? So first of all, what I want to clear up is that we don't want to increase the tilt as we go up to the top. We want to be stable as we go up to the top. So basically, for the stable fluid spine, we want it to be set up. We want to be set up slightly angled away, so somewhere in that 6 to 8 degree range. When we go up to the top of the swing, we want to maintain that spine angle, right? We want to maintain that spine angle as we go up to the top. We don't want to increase it, and we don't want to decrease it, right? So increasing the angle away would be, basically going like this. That's too much, right? That's going to force you, or not necessarily force you, but you're going to typically swing too much from the inside, bottom out too soon. You're going to bump the hips forward. That can cause some issues. If you get leaning toward the target at the top, you're typically going to swing over the top. You're typically going to fall away in the downswing, hit a lot of chunks and things like that. So we just want to stay nice and stable as we go up the top. So that would look like this. So the overall angle of our body wants to be about the same at address as it is at the top, nice and slightly angled away, somewhere in the 68 degree range. Now, as we get here, and as we come into contact, because we're shifting forward, our hips are shifting forward, and our body is rotating open, we're going to get that spine angle to be somewhere in that 18 to 25 degree range. When you look at the best ball strikers, the body is opening up kind of like that, right? So that's coming from rotation, right? And the body shifting forward. So I'd make sure that you are shifting your weight, you're getting some weight shifting forward, and you're getting the body to open up as you're coming into contact. And we have to understand is that this is the tougher part, right? So that's why it's level 3. So level 1 is at address, level 2 is at the top, level 3 is at impact. Level 1 and level 2 are fairly easy to implement because it's address and then the backswing. Obviously, nothing's moving at address. It's a static position. And then the backswing, things are moving slower, so it's easier. But in the downswing, things are moving faster, so they're going to be more difficult. So it sounds like you're on the right track based on what you said to me. You sounds like you know what you need to do. Like the body's not opening up. You're not getting as much rotation. That's really what you need to do. You need to get more rotation, right? Because that's what gets that spine angle more angled away as you come into contact. So if you imagine, if I have my hips like this, right? So I'm very, very angled away. Well, I have no rotation here, but I'm bumped out my compression line. So in order for my compression line to not be bumped out, I have to push it back, right? And now my spine angle is the same, but my compression line is good, and I'm in that angled away good position there that we're looking for. So it really comes down to rotation. So that's what I'd be looking at is improving that rotation as you come into contact. Sounds like you know what you need to do. It's just a matter of doing it, And it's just going to take some time and repetition. It doesn't, not something that happens like that. It's a tougher part to get for sure. All right. So Kevin M says, hello Q. Front view video of my swing clearly shows me casting at the bottom of my swing. The resulting follow through is a bit of a chicken wing. In my opinion, this is the biggest issue. Quickest path to resolution. Quickest path to resolution is going to be working on making sure that you are getting some lag in the start of the downswing, and then that straight line release after that. So if you look at your swing and you're getting some good lag to this position, and then your hips stall out, and then you early release like this, then I'd be looking at the straight line release. You may also want to look at the move, right? Because the reason why you may be doing that could be because basically the chicken wing comes from the arms racing in front of the body, right? So if I don't rotate my body when my arms go in front, then I'm going to get that, right? I'm exaggerating, but that's basically what's happening there. So in order to get my hands to stay nice and long, or my arms to stay nice and long through impact, I have to have that release out in front. So I look at lag. If the lag isn't good, work on the lag. If the lag looks good, then I would look at the straight line release and or the move. If you're coming down steep, I'd look at the move. If you have the club nice and shallowed out, then I'd definitely look at the straight line release to get that working a little bit better. So real quickly, just to tell you what steep is. Steep is when you see the club in kind of a vertical position in the start of the downswing. You want the butt end of the club to be pointing outside the golf ball, right? So if it's pointing inside the golf ball, that's steep. Outside the golf ball, in general, that's going to be shallow. We want that club nice and shallow. If the club's nice and shallow, then you can stay in your posture, right? And it allows you to stay in your posture. You're not going to react to it and stand up and flip. So that's why I'd be looking at, without further, knowing more information or seeing your swing. That's one thing I tell you. One thing I would tell you, though, you're looking for quickest path to resolution. The resolution to this is not going to be quick. Like I was talking about with Barry, I believe it was Barry G. I think he was talking about the hips. Yeah. So the closer you get to impact, the longer it's going to. When there's changes that need to happen, and it's the closer it is to impact, the longer it's going to take to achieve that. The reason is that that's the fastest point in the golf swing. So fixing address issues is the fastest thing, right? Fixing backswing issues is the second fastest thing. Fixing transition issues is the third fastest thing. But from that transition to impact, these are the things that take the longest, and the release is one of those things, right? So it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, repetition. There's no quick fix there. It's going to take a lot of time and repetition to make that happen. So basically, I just want you to know that, because I don't want you to get into it and think, oh, I'm just going to work on this for a couple of weeks and my swing is going to be where I want. If you work really hard, it's going to take months. If you don't work real hard and work on it maybe a couple times a week, a few hours a week, then it's going to take a year or more probably to get there. So if you're not interested in that, then just have a chicken wing, right? Just because you're not going to get anywhere, with where you're at. So what I'd recommend is get good at the swing that you have. Improve your skill with the swing you're having. What that means is get better at hitting the ball in the center of the face, getting better awareness of the center of the face, your club path, and just understand that you're not going to have a super efficient, loft on the club. You're going to be adding loft, but you can increase. Doesn't mean you don't have a path to improvement. It just means that you have to take a different path, which would be working on ball striking type things. So technical things that are happening at impact are the most difficult things to change. And I only, if you're wanting to change those things, it's going to take you to the next level, but it takes time and repetition. It's not something that happens like that. I'm telling you, it's worth it. Once you get it, once you do it, and once you get there, it's 100% worth it, because you're going to be able to take your game to another level, a higher level. Whereas if you are just working on your ball striking, you can improve your game, but you're not going to be able to get it as high a level as maybe you'd want to. So if your goal is to be a scratch player, right? The goal is to be a scratch player, and you are an early releaser of the club, you're likely going to need to you're going to need to change this, unless you're just a crazy, very, very highly skilled person, which there are golfers out there that are like that. For example, Phil Mickelson, he now, don't get me wrong, he has a very good swing. Technically, it is pretty good, but compared to what we see the highest level of golfers, we look at Dustin Johnson and Justin Thomas, John Rahm. If you look at their swings are very technically very, very good, which allows them to be very, very consistent. Phil Mickelson's swing is technically, there are some things that can be a lot better, or quite a bit better. He actually starts down steep and then shallows it late, right? It releases it a little earlier, right? And he struggles with his driver. but he's won lots of majors. Phil Mickelson's probably one of the most, if not the most skilled golfers ever. The guy has crazy good hands and timing. So, that doesn't mean you can't improve. So I wouldn't look at it that way, but I'd be looking at those avenues. If you want to take the path of technique, understand that it's not going to be quick. It's going to be a process. So Mike D says, thanks, Q. Found the video. You the boss. No problem, Mike. So John S. So John S. says, when you talk about the right elbow working in starting the downswing, should the right shoulder retract at the same time? I seem to get more speed in my swing when I feel this stretch in transition. So what your arm is doing, what your right shoulder is doing is called externally rotating, right? So your arm isn't really going to retract. It's not going to get back here. That would be the opposite of what's going to, if your arm retracts, that's going to put so retraction, just for those who aren't familiar, retraction is when your shoulder blade moves toward your spine. And maybe that's not what you're talking about, but that's when your shoulder blade moves toward the spine. So at the start of the swing, your arm is retracted, right? So when you turn your shoulders, your shoulder is retracted at the top. It can't further retract when you're starting down. It actually needs to start moving into a protraction a little bit. And then your trail arm, or your shoulder, your arm in your shoulder needs to externally rotate. So if I have my arm like this is, if I turn it like that, that's internal rotation. And if I turn it like that, that's external. So internal, external rotation. We need external rotation when we start down with our elbow in the downswing. So if I put the club in my hand, right, here I am at the top of my swing, my shoulder is retracted right now. My shoulder blade is moved toward my spine. It actually is going to move a little bit away from my spine as I start down. And I also need external rotation to get that club to be shallowed out. Right. So now you can see I've kind of got it perpendicular with my spine. That's what I want to have happen. What we see in a lot of players is they have the retracted, but then the shoulder actually moves into internal rotation. So this elbow starts to work out away from my body, and my shoulder kind of stays retracted. And then I'm going to come over the top in steep when I do that. Or I'm going to get here, and then I'm going to think, oh, crap, I'm going to swing over the top unless I do something. And that doing something is this. That's early extension. So my hips are moving toward the ball, and now I'm back on plane, but I have to flip and release early to get to the golf ball, right? So if I'm here and I get steep, I have to stand up to get it on plane, and then I have to release early. So maybe that's not what you mean by retraction. Maybe what you mean is external rotation. And if that's the case, then yeah, because that's going to get the club working more behind you. It's getting the club actually working further away from the ball, which gives you more space and time to accelerate that club. And that's going to help you to get more speed. So I'm guessing that's actually what's happening. And maybe you feel like it's actually retracting, but the reality is that it's externally rotating, and that's what's getting you more speed. Because odds are, if your shoulder is already retracted here, and you try to retract it more as you're coming down, you're just going to end up getting stuck. It's just I don't see an avenue to getting more speed doing that, because you're going to have to make compensations in the swing that aren't going to allow you to really get as much speed as you would want to. So let's keep moving here. Sorry, I thought I had my phone plugged in. Just noticed that it wasn't. There we go. So moving on here. So Brett B says, hi, Q. Would you explain hands in front of you in the backswing in detail? And is part of it extending your right forearm in the backswing? So I guess I'm not sure what in reference you're thinking of, but basically, typically what you want to do is you want to keep in the backswing, you want to try and keep the hands in front of your body for as long as you can. So what that means is I have my hands in front of my chest here, and I want to keep my hands in front of my chest. So you can see as I do that, that allows me to turn a lot, right? So my hands are still in front of my chest. Now, obviously, I'm going to get to a terminal point with my chest where I can't turn anymore, and then my arms are going to need to kind of continue to go up to the top, right? But where we get in trouble is where we move the hands back behind us right away, and we're not really turning our chest. So we're just kind of lifting up the club. We don't turn our shoulders. And now I got this elbow really flaring out. And when I start the downswing, I'm typically going to kind of go like that, right? So what you see in the best ball strikers in the world is usually a nice wide takeaway and the hand staying in front of the chest for a lot of the beginning of the takeaway. You heard of a one-piece takeaway? That's exactly what that means. That means the club, my arms, and my shoulders and my chest, they're basically all one piece going back, right? So imagine this, you molded all of that in cement, and it stays like that all the way until basically you get to where the chest comes close to a terminal point, and then at that point, the arms will continue to kind of go past the chest. Now, at this point, my arms are behind me right now, and they're going to kind of stay behind me as I start the downswing and then get back in front of me when I get into the straight line release position. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm not sure if that's what you mean as in, what exactly you're looking for there, but that's that trail forearm is a big part of that right forearm or that right arm. If we bend it, that's what gets the arm behind us. We want to keep that pretty straight for most of the backswing, and then it starts to fold up as we get up to the top. Because getting too much bend in that arm can also be an issue. If we get that arm kind of pinned behind us, this is especially too, I hear this all the time. People say, hey, I can't hold on to the grip at the top with my trail hand. My hand wants to come off. Almost always, it's because they're bending that trail arm a lot, and they're putting it into a position where they can't hold on to the club and get the club back very far, right? So if I have my arm pinned behind me, I can only go to about right here until I'm going to start losing grip of the club. All right, so just kind of give you a close-up. I can only go to about right there. And then as I keep going, I have to kind of let go of the club because my arm can't bend that way. My wrist can't bend and stay on the club. So what we want to do is try to get that out going more out away from our body, and we want to get less bend in this arm. So that way we can get a nice wide and big turn, right? Create lots of space for this club. And then we can also have space to move our elbow in the downswing. If it's pinned behind us, it doesn't have anywhere to go. It kind of has to stay back there, and you'll come down steep and all kinds of issues from there. All right, so let's keep moving here. So Bob R says, when I get good hip rotation, I question if I fired my hips too early relative to my shoulder rotation. It doesn't feel as I've added the shoulder to the hip rotation. Is there a correct timing between the two? So basically the way I would think about it is in the backswing is it's like a gear system, right? So if you think about your watch, right, the gears that are working inside there, they are gears that are going to make the second hand go, and there are gears that are going to make the minute hand go, right? So the second's moving faster and the minute hand is moving slower. So that's kind of what's happening in the swing, is that everything's kind of moving at the same time as you're going up to the top, but certain pieces are rotating faster than others, right? So my hips aren't rotating as much, right? They're rotating somewhere around 45 degrees, and they're not rotating as much, so they're not going to rotate as fast. And my shoulders are rotating more, let's say at least 90 degrees, so they're going to rotate faster. So that's what I would try to feel like in the start of the backswing, is that it's a gear system. My hips are moving my shoulders, and my shoulders are moving my arms, and it's just kind of a gear system that's creating my backswing, right? So it's not, I think some people have this idea that the arms go and then my shoulders are going to go. No, if you look at tour players, watch tour players slow motion video. You can go on YouTube and see this. What you're going to see is that club's going back, the hips and the shoulders and everything, everything is going back together. It's just that some things are rotating faster than others. The arms are going to be going faster than the hips, or sorry, the arms are going to be going faster than the shoulders, and the shoulders are going to be going faster than the hips, right? And you can even break it down to the knees. The knees are kind of rotating back too, and my hips are going to be moving faster than my knees, right? And so on and so forth. So you can kind of think of it as that kind of a chain reaction. Now, in the start of the downswing, it's the opposite. We're going to have our knees are going to start moving, right? They're going to start flexing and moving. Then my hips are going to start flexing and moving. Then my rib cage. Then my shoulders. Then my arms, and then the club. And then the hands and the club. That's kind of the timing of everything that's going on there. And you're going to get some separation there, right? So you're going to go down here. Then you're going to get the hips start to work out in front, right? And you're going to have some separation. Your hips are going to get back to square. Your shoulders are going to be a little bit closed off. And then your hips are going to get open, and your shoulders are only going to be a little bit open. And then everything syncs up in that straight line release position. Everything kind of syncs up right here. So we get everything separated here, right? We got everything separated. My hips are rotated 45 degrees. We'll say my shoulders are rotated 90 degrees. And then I come down. When I get to impact, my hips are about 45 degrees, and my shoulders are slightly open. And then I get into the straight line release, and everything's pointing out in front. Right? Everything sinks back up out here, and then I go into the full finish from there. So that's basically how everything syncs together. And Clay talks about this in more detail in the top speed golf system. I believe talks about it in the compression line. I think he talks about it in the straight line release course. I haven't watched a lot of the courses in a long time, so some of my memory is fading on some of the stuff where exactly everything is. But Clay talks about that more. He talks about the momentum train, how everything's kind of syncing up, but more so in the straight line release course is where you're going to learn more about how everything's syncing up. So we got about 15 minutes or so. We got plenty of questions, so never mind. So I'm going to try to go through these questions fairly quickly the rest of the way, because it looks like we do have a lot of them. So I'll go through them pretty quickly the rest of the way, and then we'll finish up. I have to go right at 4. So Michael M says, I'm new to this system. I've been struggling with 1, finishing by backswing, and 2, starting the transition with my lower body. Is there a specific lesson or lessons I should focus on? Thank you. So what I'd recommend doing is I would just focus on your backswing first, get that to where you want, and that's going to be the power turn course. All right, so go to the power turn, make that backswing second nature, make finishing your backswing second nature, because if you focus on your backswing and you get that to where you're working, where maybe you get it every now and then you move on to another part of your swing, the moment you move on to that other part of your swing, you're going to stop doing the other thing that you were doing before. So you need to make it second nature. Get to where if you did anything else with your backswing but finish it, it would feel weird and awkward. All right, so work on the power turn course to get that backswing working correctly, and then you can start to work on transition and lower body and things like that, and that's working through the top speed golf system. So basically, if you work through the top speed golf system the way it's laid out, you're going to be nailing the things that you want to be working on, the transition with the lower body and the legs and all that good stuff. So that's what I'd recommend doing. Start in the power turn course and work your way through. To get to that, click the instruction tab, then click top speed golf system, and click the power turn. So Kevin M says, good points, improving ball striking. Where can I find them? What I'd recommend doing is taking the ball striking masterclass. That's a course that we offer every month or 2. So be on the lookout in your email. Not sure how long you've been a member or where you live, but if you're a new member and you live in somewhere where it's winter and cold and you can't really play right now, then you probably haven't seen anything about the ball striking masterclass. But once it warms up outside, you'll see some stuff about the ball striking masterclass there. But if you have been a member for a while, you've probably seen lots of stuff about the ball striking masterclass, and just jump on the next time that we offer it. That's what I'd highly recommend doing to do the ball striking masterclass course when we offer that next. So Gene K says, can you give advice on chipping off uphill lie, a chunk behind the ball? So what I'd recommend doing is don't fight the slope. That's kind of my best advice for, excuse me. I've been talking all day. My best advice for hitting off of slopes is just not to fight the slope. Go with the slope. So if you have an uphill lie, I want you to get your body angled away with the slope. If you have a downhill lie, I want you to get your body angled with the slope. Ball above the feet, you're going to be more upright with the slope. Ball below the feet, you're going to be more bent over with the slope. So that's what I'd recommend doing. Now, if you're chunking it off an uphill lie, it's fairly common because when you're on an uphill lie, it's hard to get your weight forward. So I try to get your body with the slope so you can kind of swing with the slope, up the slope, and try to get as much of your weight on your lead side as you can. Really, really try to get all your weight, completely unweight this trail foot. When you get on an uphill slope, you want to get on your back foot. And if you hit into the slope like this and you're on your back foot, you're going to chop into it and you're going to come down really steeply into the ball relative to the slope, and you're going to hit a lot of chunks. So get your weight forward, get your body angled up the slope, and then swing up the slope, swing with it, and you'll hit a lot better shots. Gene K says, how important is depth at P4 for shallowing the downswing? Very important. If you're out here like this, you're gonna have to kind of reroute things, right? So you want to have, and I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about in depth of what exactly, because there could be a lot of things. You could be talking about hip depth, you could be talking about shoulder, hand, club, you could be talking about all kinds of things. But the more depth you have, the easier it's going to be to shallow it. The more steep you are and the more up you're like this, the harder it's going to be to shallow it. Now, you can go very, very steep like a Matt Wolf and use momentum to help you to shallow it, but that's not for everybody. So it really depends on what you're doing generally in your swing. You could benefit from, I'll tell you, hip depth is definitely very, very important. In any case, whether you're someone who swings more steeply or more shallow, more depth with your hands, you have to have hip depth. If you don't have hip depth and you just kind of slide your hips and go like this or stand up, you're going to have a hard time being consistent in golf because you're not going to be able to get the impact conditions that are going to allow you to be really consistent. So hip depth, really, really important. The upstairs stuff is important depending on the person. If you need to get your hands more deep to be able to shallow it in the downswing, I'd say it's very important. But if you're someone who's like Bubba Watson, who can get the hands way up here and shallow it and get it to where it needs to be, then not that important, right? I wouldn't try to tell Bubba, hey, you need to get your hands deeper, right? Because he has no problem with shallowing out the club. All right, so let's keep answering questions here. So David C says, I'm 65 years young, in decent shape. I need to hit it longer. I have increased my swing speed, but still hit the same distance. I know it's that I'm not getting lag. Me, please, or help me, please. So if you're getting more speed, it really doesn't have anything to do with lag, or most likely. If you're actually getting more speed, then that's good. That means you have potential to hit it further. What you need to change is your impact conditions. So for some reason, you're not transferring that potential energy that you have to the golf ball. So I would look at is where you're striking it on the club face, right? If you're striking it on the toe, on the heel, you're not going to be transferring the energy to the golf ball. So you may want to work on your strike location. Use some foot power spray. That'd be the number one thing. Be making sure that you're hitting the ball solidly. If you're hitting it off the heel, off the toe, too high, too low on the face, you're not going to be transferring that energy to the golf ball. I would also look at the path of your club, right? So if you're cutting across the ball, maybe in your effort to get more speed, you've started swinging too much out to in or too much in to out, right? So if your face and path are off, you're not going to transfer as much energy to the golf ball. Imagine at a nail in a piece of wood here. If I were to be driving that nail with as much force in that nail as I could, I wouldn't go like this, right? I would go straight down into that nail. I'd go straight down into it. That's what you want to do with the club. You want that club to work straight into that golf ball. You want that face to be square, and you want that path to be square. and you want that center face strike. So those would be the things I'd be looking at to be able to help you to transfer more energy. If you've got more speed, that means you've got what it takes to hit it further. It's just a matter of taking that newfound speed and translating it into distance by improving those ball striking things that I just talked about. So if it's hook or if it's slice, we have courses for that. Work through the top speed, work through those courses on the website. We have a never slice again, never hook again course. Work through those courses. If it's strike location, right? I'd use some foot power spray, see where you're striking it. If it's strike location, you're hitting it all over the face, then we need to get that tightened up, right? So I would adjust your feel to get the desired result. Typically, you're going to have a tendency. So you're going to hit everything on the toe or everything on the heel, right? Or everything too high or too low. You're going to have a tendency. So adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. If you're finding that all your strikes are more in the heel part of the face, then feel like you're hitting it in the toe to get it more in the center, and keep doing that until you actually start hitting it in the toe. And then you can ease off of that feeling. All right, so Colin T says, I have a fairly full swing with a tendency to come over the top. When I think rhythm, the result is improved. Please discuss how I might improve my rhythm into the swing. Is rhythm connected with shoulder-arm coordination? It could be. So I would call that more of your sequencing. So what likely happens is when you kind of slow things down a little bit and have a little bit more rhythm, right? You probably get a better weight shift and then get that club working more from the inside. But when you try to quicken things up, you have a quick start to the downswing, you probably start down with your arms early, which gets the club coming down over the top. You get the weight shift going later, and then you're not as consistent. So what I had to work on I would look at your swing on video and see what are the things that go out of sync when you do go fast, and focus on those pieces. So you may want to think, if it's like what I said, which is usually the case, then I would really focus on getting that weight shift to the lead side before you start your arms going down. A great drill for that is the step drill. It's called How to Start, or it's in a video that's called How to Start the Downswing. Search the word downswing on the website. It's a video. It's called How to Start the Downswing. Clay goes over the step drill in there. That's going to be a really good drill to help you get that weight shift starting sooner in the swing, so that way you develop a good rhythm in your swing. So Louis V says, any guidelines on where the left hip should point in the backswing and where the right hip should point on the downswing? So let's talk about where the hips are throughout the swing. And I think that may help you, because I'm not sure exactly what kind of answer you're looking for here. So at address, your hips are going to have a tilt, right? So let me do this. I'll just put this through my belt loops here, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. So at address, my hips are going to have a little bit of tilt to them. So they're going to be kind of tilted down a little bit. When I turn up to the top, right, I want to maintain that tilt. So my hips are going to be tilted down a little bit, and they're going to turn. So my right hip's going to be a little bit higher than my left hip. Let me show you from this angle. So I'm turning my hips. I kind of look like that, right? As I start the downswing, what's actually going to happen, or what we see in the best ball strikers, is you're going to get that belt line is going to drop a little bit, right? The belt line is going to drop, and you're going to get some flex in the legs. So sometimes the hips will kind of start to turn down a little bit as you do that. So my hips had a tilt here, and then that tilt kind of goes even more down. So if you imagine a laser coming out of my belt buckle, right? It was pointed out here, and then as I start the downswing, it's pointed more down toward the golf ball, right? So now I'm here, and then from there, my left hip is actually going to start to rise, right? They're going to start to rise as my hips extend, right? We've talked about early extension. The reason why it's called early extension is because you actually want extension in the swing. You just don't want it too early. If we go up to the top and then we go like that, that's early extension. What we want is to go here, get down like that, and then have the early extension. So if you struggle, or have the extension, not early extension. So if you struggle with hip movement, I find that a really good thing to think about is the hips move away from the ball in the start of the downswing. So away from the ball in the downswing, away from the ball away from the ball in the backswing, away from the ball in the downswing, and then the hips extend toward the target. So the hips never move closer to the golf ball. I'd feel like they move away, and then toward the target. And you may even want to think that the hips move left of the target, if you're right-handed. That could be a good. Now that's not the reality of what's going on. Your hips aren't really moving. They shouldn't be moving toward. I mean, your left hip's moving a little bit closer to the ball as you go up to the top, and then your right hip starts to move closer. But what I see all the time is that the hips move. The center of the hips kind of move closer in the backswing, and then closer in the downswing, and then we kind of end up like this. What we need is more like this as we're coming through. So hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if that answers your question. If you're asking questions about where the hips should be specific at what point in the swing. I need a moment in time. If you say in the backswing, that's not a moment in time. That's all of this. So you can see where the hips are pointing throughout that. And then the downswing is not a moment in time either. So maybe the top of the swing or maybe halfway down the downswing. Give me a point in time if you're looking for something specific. Otherwise, I can't give you a specific answer. So Gene K says, thanks, bro. No problem. Another great session today with Hazel supervising. Yep, she sleeps on the job, though. She's probably ready for a snack. All right, so 4 o'clock, I got to get going. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you all next time.